Let's hear from Benjamin Netanyahu here. He's talking about appealing to the US, telling them essentially, our enemy is your enemy.
They've tried to assassinate President Trump twice. They bombed American embassies. They killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They killed and injured thousands of Americans with their IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. They burn the American flag. They chant endlessly, death to America. Our enemy is your enemy. And by doing what we're doing, we're dealing with something that will threaten all of us.
And then, on the other hand, we have the Democrats, rudderless, leaderless, increasingly led by the most radical elements within the party, like Bernie Sanders, AOC. And Tim Walz, the man who was going to be vice president, well, he's got an idea of who could possibly mediate a peace deal.
Now, who is the voice in the world that can negotiate some type of agreement in this? Who holds the moral authority? Who holds the ability to do that? Because we are not seen as a neutral actor. And we maybe never were. I don't want to tell anybody that. I think there's a lot of people who say you always leaned one way in this. But I think there was at least an attempt to be somewhat of the arbitrator in this. We saw President Carter do it with Begin and Sadat. We've had certain wins along the way that were actually mutually beneficial both ways. Now I ask who that is. And I mean, consistently over and over again, we're going to have to face the reality. It might be the Chinese.
Excuse what? What? Moral authority, the Chinese. James, take me through this.
Well, I mean, there's so much wrong in what Tim Walz just said there. I mean, first of all, for him to mention Carter, when Jimmy Carter was the guy on whom the Iranian Revolution fell, he was the one who let the Shah fall and missed all the intelligence and everything else. That was a disaster, so we lost that. But the Chinese being the neutral actors here.
Neutral.
I mean, China, China, the selfless global humanitarian Xi Jinping is going to be the one to sort out this conflict. Look, let me tell you something here. This this plan that Tim Walz had, this is entirely predictable because guess what? When he was running for vice president during that hilarious, 87 days or whatever he was doing that, remember when it came out, all of the stuff that came out about Tim Walz and China, how much time he'd spent in China, the number of trips he'd been there as an English teacher, his sympathies to the Chinese government. Well, you know what? We're seeing that right now. We are so lucky that the Harris-Walz team didn't come in because they would be abdicating their authority right now to Beijing rather than asserting American authority, which I think is what Donald Trump is trying to do here.
It's absolutely delusional. Like, China is part of this axis of evil, basically. It is anti-America. It tries to sow as much discord as it can in America. We're expecting it to be able to make peace in the Middle East when it's in Chinese interest to have as much division as possible there.
And we see like over and over in modern geopolitics, what do we talk about? We talk about the BRICS countries. What are three of those countries? Russia, Iran, and China. Like, these three countries are tied up completely in an anti-Western alliance. The idea that you would even bring China to the table on that is insane. It is nuts. It is bonkers. Tim Walz is, I'm sorry to say, he is just so stupid. Really, I mean, it's just the ignorance. And that he would go out and say that and not be laughed at by whoever was interviewing him there. I mean, whoever is interviewing them, if they didn't in the next second pull him up, they should quit their jobs too.
Well, they should. This is a man who wanted to be vice president, who has ambitions to be president, Caroline, and really is best known for putting tampons in boys' restrooms across his state. That's earned him the nickname Tampon Tim.
I know.
And really, maybe that's the area he should stick to instead of geopolitics, because this is embarrassing work. Meanwhile, let's hear from Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth saying that Donald Trump was very much informed of what was about to happen.
American people can be assured that President Trump is dialed in. This is not an auto pen moment. You know, we had that where the world saw our gaze distracted or not paying attention at all. President Trump is dialed in. I get to see it every single day. He knows every single dynamic of what's going on here. And I'll tell you what he's doing, Rachel. He's putting America first.
Good.
And you understand, hey, how many factors there are, how many dynamics there are in the world. But his directive to me and to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and throughout our forces, hey, make sure you are robustly postured and prepared. And we are.
Well, it's very different to this time last year with Joe Biden. If this was happening under Joe Biden, we wouldn't even know who's pulling the strings, who's making the calls. What a great change in government, really,
Well,
and at a very critical juncture in what's happening in the Middle East.
And I mean, any sort of sense that people have, and I know this is a line that's going around here that, oh, you know, the White House was kept out of the loop, that Israel acted independently here, you know, that is completely untrue. There's been so much contact between both governments here. And in essence, it was almost sort of a head fake on the Iranian government, on the mullahs, to say, well, you know, the U.S. is going to hold Israel back, so, you know, don't you have to worry about that. But you have to come to the table. And then they didn't come to the table. Remember, 62 days before the strikes, Donald Trump put a very clear message out there. You've got 2 months, you've got 60 days to come back to the table on a nuclear deal. Iran went the other way. They tried to break out their nuclear program. And on day 62, you know what? They found out.
They found out, they were messing around, and they found out.
But this way, America gets to keep its hands sort of clean and say we weren't involved in this directly. Obviously, this is the Israelis doing the strikes. However, if you hit a single one of our US military targets or people, we will come after you with everything.
And that's the thing. I mean, it would be, you know, there are some people, including some on the right, who are like, oh, no, this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be this whole huge Middle East war because Iran is going to start, you know, hitting American troops at American bases. Well, you know, that would be, if you want to talk about regime change and you want to talk about the end of the Iranian regime, that would be the surest way to guarantee that.
I don't even think the mad mullahs are that mad. I don't think they're going to be hitting American targets knowing Donald Trump is the president. You just would not take that chance.
You remember when Trump, you know, took out Soleimani after there were attacks on American bases in Iraq.
We were told World War III was going to start
and we were told that, you know, World War III was going to start there. But again, you know, there was a very quick action-reaction consequence, you know, and that pattern has been set up whenever Trump's in the White House.
But the Israelis, the planning that went is astonishing. We're talking about years of planning, Mossad agents in Iran, setting everything into motion, just all the different parts. I've been reading so much about this in the last 24 hours, Caroline,
it's like the
fascinating.
The pager attack on Hezbollah. They had
pager attack on steroids.
I mean, on steroids. I mean, they had, as you say, Mossad agents in Tehran, reportedly, planting the seeds.
Footage of them.
Oh, yes, that's right. They released quite grainy footage of them setting up these drones and these missile attacks to hit the targets. I mean, the attacks have been, so far, there have been some children killed, sadly, in Iran, but they have been very precise, like laser focused, to the point where sometimes it's an entire building, it's just one unit in that building that contains someone from the Revolutionary Guard, someone high up. Compare that to the attacks in Israel. I mean, they are indiscriminate. I mean, we've heard of one target that they may have hit, but other than that, it's residential areas, highly populated. 4 people have already been killed, many wounded. So it is a very different type of tit for tat.